All right, welcome everybody to another episode here at Chain Reaction. I appreciate you joining us. We have a very special guest today, Courtney George, who is with Wreaths across America, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But it's time of year, December 13th is a big deal. Courtney serves as the Director of Transportation and Industry Relations for Wreaths across America, where she mobilizes the national transportation and logistics community to support one of the largest coordinated charitable movements in the country. She brings more than 18 years of experience across the trucking, LTL, and transportation sectors with leadership roles at Saya, Hub Group, Evo, Fusion Now Agency, Martin, Knight, and DTL. That's a lot, Courtney. She has created driver affinity programs. She's built recruiting pipelines. She's led national hiring events. She's supported dispatcher carrier relations and championed initiatives to increase female representation in the industry, which we are passionate about. Women in Trucking named her one of the females to watch for her leadership. And today she brings her expertise to a mission that unifies transportation leaders, volunteers, and communities across the country. I mean, I feel stupid. In my 35 years, I've just been in sales. You've done a lot, and that is amazing. Welcome, and I appreciate you taking some time here to talk to us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I have done a lot, but it's all part of the journey. I think that's what people in trucking have to understand is that you always are flexing and moving around in some capacity or what your role is. Um, e- Even if you just change within an organization, if somebody sees your skill set, that they're ensuring that they're helping you grow and helping you grow within their organization.
Yeah, I believe in helping others first, and it all comes back. So that's well put. December 13th is coming up here, and Reach Across America is there's like a giant drive here toward that date and with everything there. And before we open up with questions, I mean, I have always known about Reach Across America. When I got into this space about 3 years ago, it really just it became a reality for me because I was like, oh, I really get it now. And as I mentioned right before we started, I sponsored some Reach this year. But why don't you talk a little bit about December 13th, kind of what it means and what the impact is of people supporting the cause.
So, December 13th is National Wreaths Across America Day this year. It's a date that is approved by Congress. Our goal as an organization is to remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach the next generation about freedom. So while we're really well and known for placing wreaths on the headstones of our veterans this year, that's going to happen at over 5,500 locations. We also have a year-long mission where we're working and teaching about, whether it's a trucking aspect, whether it's our wreaths radio that we have. We also have a K through 12 curriculum in English and in Spanish that teaches different lessons throughout different times of the year that teachers and educators can download. I mean, we have so many things that we've done. It's really a cool thing. But, most importantly, it all goes back to our veterans and how we are honoring them and remembering them.
That's awesome. I mean, that is a big deal. And is there a website or somewhere we can drive people to for anybody that want to participate?
Absolutely. If you go to www.wreathsacrossamerica.org, you're going to have the opportunity to volunteer to place a wreath. If you can't make it for Wreath Day, I highly encourage everyone to just make a $17 donation. That's one additional veteran that is remembered each year. They often say a person when they die twice. Once when they actually die, and the second time when their name is said last. And so our goal as an organization is to ensure each year that we are remembering every veteran that we can.
That's awesome. $17, people, not a lot to ask. People gave the ultimate sacrifice. And yeah, I think 9/11 woke a lot of people up, to really the impact of what a lot of people do when they put others first, and this is a great cause. So let's support if we can. So thank you for that. So let's get into it. Why don't you tell me what drew you into trucking and transportation at the very beginning of your career?
I fell into it. That is probably the easiest way to say it. I was fresh out of college looking for a job. And the first offer I got was into the transportation realm. And I immediately fell in love with how fast paced it is, how you've got to have the ability to pivot quickly. And so, from that perspective, I think it's really something cool. And part of why I've stayed in it is because of my love for, it's ever changing, it's ever pivoting, um, opportunities to learn lessons, always great. And that's really how I got into it, was just first job offer I got, and I was like, "Okay, let's try it. I've got nothing to lose."
You don't look like the kind of person that likes rinse and repeat. You look like the kind of person that gets excited by, like, things popping up and being like, "Oh, that's interesting," you know?
Very much so. I will tell you, I'm very bored at the mundane, rinse and repeat, just expecting your day to be the exact same thing every single day. We For me, I should say, the thrill of the change and learning something out of that is what really, is a motivator for me. I love the opportunity, like I said, to learn. Sometimes it's not always a fun way to learn, but the change is what helps keep you agile. I think keeping my mind, engaged truly, that makes it more fun to me.
That's awesome. So when you look at everything you did, recruiting, HR, operations, dispatch, leadership roles across multiple carriers, and we named them all when we introduced you, what connects all those experiences?
People. That's the easiest answer I could ever give. People is what connects all of them. Um, my love for people and working with different people truly brings it, it's a full circle. And that's what people don't get is trucking is such a people business. They are they are the one thing that is always going to be ever changing and not constant. And working with people and understanding them and knowing what's their motivating factor, because it's different for everyone.
Conexial, I mean, we have, you know, two women, incredible women that sit on our leadership team. I mean, we support women in trucking. We're a big believer and diversifying, kind of the space. And I love the space. I've grown to love the space, but it's been like an old boys club for a long time. And I think women just, are just as equal as men, but I think they bring such a different perspective to the space. And I know that you're a big believer in that. You've built affinity groups and initiatives to support women in this space, and really all underrepresented groups. What motivated you to do that?
I was an employer and we were having turnover issues. And, I watched the average tenure of an employee go from, over 8 years to down to 5 years and 9 months because of that. And the challenge that I was given was to figure out what we could do to make people and to really focus on the culture of the company. What brings you in, um, you know, what makes you stay, right? Because to your point you mentioned earlier, the cost of losing a driver is on average $10,000.
Yep.
Because you've got loss of production, you've got all the money that it takes to do the recruiting, drug testing, all of those things. And so, I had a boss and she was outstanding as a leader and understood, and she gave me the rein to basically take a week and go do some research, talk to people, find out what was going on. So that was partially me doing some ride-alongs with drivers. Um, and I really looked and I took our technology that we had, our applicant tracking system, and started kind of playing with reports and seeing what I could get and come up with. We knew at the time that 6% of, drivers tended to be females. We were only at 1.5%. But we also knew that from a safety standpoint, from an insurance standpoint, females tend to be safer. They tend to have less accidents. They don't take as many risks as men do. And so they also retain better. They have a longer retention um, trending. And so, what was I doing to make them feel like they were really part of a group? That they had somebody that they could talk to or mentor, because you may or may not have another female working in your terminal.
Hmm.
Um, all of those things are, what are we doing to build the culture, and or to take that and help them understand the culture. And that's really kind of where, my involvement with women in trucking came into place, and my involvement with Wreaths Across America, because I went to my boss after taking all the data and I said, hey, let's talk about this. I'm going to give you information that you didn't expect for me to give. And she was like, talk to me. And I said, our number one demographic is a veteran. And she just kind
Well,
of looked at me. And I was like, and they're not even legally required to report their service. But I was like, our number one, our demographic, over 35% of our employees are veterans. What are we doing to show our support of the military? Because we know, if you are a veteran, your love for this country is,
it's sky high, man.
yeah, absolutely. It is something that nobody else can challenge. And so, what are we doing to make that a better, let you know that we're supporting? And so, I had known about Wreaths Across America from when I worked at night, and reached out. We had some conversations and got involved. And we made it so that everyone kind of played a part. You didn't have to just be a driver. You could be a dock worker, you could be a mechanic. We wanted and actually turned that day into a national day of service for us as a company.
It's awesome.
That people could go out, because Wreaths Across America had, at that time, 4,700 locations. Now they're up to 5,500 locations. There is a location close to you that you can participate in. And it's a family friendly opportunity. So you can bring your family with you, and your coworker that your spouse hears about all the time finally gets to meet each other. It's really a
Yeah,
beautiful thing to watch that.
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I could just see how passionate you are about it, and that's awesome that you were able to fill that gap for the people that serve this country. I mean, that's great. Diversity is still an issue, right? I hear it all the time. You can physically see it when you walk into some facilities. But what do you think the biggest barriers that still limit diversity in the trucking space are? Like, why isn't it more diverse?
I would say that we in the transportation industry are at a crossroads, um, between, and our biggest barrier to overcome is their trades that are going out and reaching these high school students. Lindsay Trent with Next Gen Trucking is
I love
out there.
her. I love
She's
her.
amazing.
She's
But
coming on here next week.
oh, awesome.
Yeah,
What she's doing to get trucking into high schools, into programs like that, is so important, because yes, because of insurance reasons, we can't hire somebody immediately. But for a long time, we've always said no, no, no. And then all of a sudden, when you're 23, we somehow expect for you to have, 6 months to a year or two of experience that we can verify and turn around, and like, we're begging you to come. Hey, hold on. We'll give you a $10,000 sign on bonus. Well, we're running you away and telling you we don't want you for 8 years. So, younger people aren't thinking about trucking and coming into trucking, because we're not shown or showing ourselves as a job that they can get involved in. Hey, you maybe can't start off and be a driver, but you know what you can do? You can start working on the dock. And by the way, we'll train you to be a driver. And at that point, If you do a great job, maybe you become a dock supervisor that turns into a dispatcher or terminal manager, to show them that there is progression out there. That's something that's really important. And we also have to show in this industry, especially to the younger generation that's coming up, the flexibility that they demand.
Hmm.
Um, you know, they love a schedule, but how are we going to make sure we turn and pivot just like we did from when I got in and, started working at night transportation 2007 when I had drivers that would tell me if it's not over 2,000 miles, don't even bother to call me and try to give me that load. Now they're not wanting to go more than 500 miles from home.
It's wild how different things, how much things have changed. It really is.
Absolutely.
So let's switch it up a little bit and talk about technology. Where we talked about it just a little bit. You had mentioned that technology is really a shift for the driver, but transportation is becoming more technology dependent. I mean, we see it everywhere from going through tolls, telematics we talked about, just a lot of different things. So from telematics to mobile apps to workflow, how's this changed the way you recruit and really driver expectations? I mean, I know you touched on this a little bit before, so maybe
Yeah.
just focus more on the recruiting side, because some of these guys that have been around for a while typically don't love the technology, right? But the companies do love the technology.
We do love the technology, and what I will say is it will help us and it helps you as a driver long term because we have the ability to know and see what's going on. Like if I see that your truck hasn't started in 17 hours, I'm calling wherever you are or I'm finding somebody that's close. We're doing, a I'm going to call it a wellness check. But from the recruiting standpoint, it's also helped make that recruiting cycle that used to be several days longer now being able to qualify a driver and know within about a 90% threshold that we're going to be able to get you through orientation. If everything you said is true on your application, I'm being able to qualify you.
That's
And
awesome.
that to me is huge, is cutting that time to hire down, especially when somebody didn't get home when they were supposed to. Those are the things that are really important because when they're ready to leave, they're leaving.
I totally agree with that. When they're done, they're done, and you need to. I believe that both the right technology and the right rollout, regardless of what you're providing the driver, needs to be done correctly, because the last thing you want them to do is just get fed up, because they're not used to it or they don't like it or don't understand it. Don't
Yeah.
understand it's the biggest problem.
Very much so. And, they don't understand it, but also we've got to change and shift from, years ago, we had these 3-day long orientations. We can get all of that done. And, I give a shout out to Gina at Luma Learning. Gina has got a whole program and understands that those small increments of learning that they can push through your ATS or, CRM, whichever way you want it to be, and tie it into your safety. So you're giving once a month a safety training that's less than 8 minutes to a driver. That's an 8-minute snippet. The the average, focus time for really anyone is about 8 minutes. So especially on a training. So gone are the days that you have these long training courses, sessions. And that's what I really love to see this industry pivoting on is it's in there. You've got it tracked that it's in there. There's even technology now to record that the person who passed or did that training was the person that you do have employed. That way, if somebody comes back, God forbid a plaintiff attorney comes back, you've got that access, you've got that technology. You can say, hey, no, we worked on this. This is where they passed their course.
Yeah, that's awesome. We know about the technology that companies are looking to push to drivers, right? But what do you think, when it comes to drivers and fleet employees? What are they asking for when it comes to technology that supports their work? What do they want?
They want something that's easy, very user friendly,
I know a company.
something that, and this is really where I stress this. If companies will work with technology companies that will do what they want instead of being forced to fit a square peg into a round hole,
Amen.
um, that is where the ability for success and creating that better, driver experience is really going to pay off. That's my personal opinion. From the employee standpoint, they want very clear communication and they want to have easy access to you. Gone are the days that we're just sending a Qualcomm message. You can have a actual conversation, especially when you're taking your 30-minute break. Um, and do it all through technology. Many people, younger generation, love texting. They don't love to be on the phone like, the drivers when I first got into the industry. So there are just so many of these nuances that are changing that the technology does support. But for a driver, it's got to be, you know, easy, simple, um, and they have to see the first couple times they use it, they have to see the benefit of it.
I agree. I agree. Um, so let's switch it up and talk about Reese. Like I said, I always knew about it, but I get it, and I'm developing a ton of passion for it. First year sponsoring it this year, and I know the good work that Conexial does with you guys, and our marketing leader Kristen. Um, but what you do at Reese involves a ton of coordinating with transportation companies. Like it's a national mission. I don't know how you do it. We don't need to get into that because that's a much longer conversation. But
Yeah.
I could probably answer this question for you. But what makes this meaningful for you? Because that is a technical term here, crap ton of work to coordinate all that logistics and find empty space and carriers that are willing to transport. So talk a little bit about that.
I would say what makes it worth it to me is a couple things. You don't have to dig deep into a person's family to find a veteran. Both my grandfather served, my brother-in-law is in the National Guard and works full time for the National Guard. So being able and having the opportunity to give back for people that I care about tremendously is one thing. All that being said, watching and seeing how people come together. Again, I've stressed this throughout this conversation that people for me is very much so a motivating
Mm,
factor.
yep.
Um, Being able to see how, and I will say, being at a cemetery and watching a kid place a wreath and not knowing that he's placing the wreath and the family is right behind them for the person that he's placing that wreath for. And then in turn, them telling them about their loved one. It is educational for the person that placed the wreath. It is also very healing for the
Yep.
person who, for the family who is right there. Being able to tell them that. One of my favorite Gold Star moms keyed it in a way that it made sense. When she talked about her son Isaac, she always says, "Don't ask me how he died, ask me how he lived, and I'll tell you his story." Because she doesn't want it to be focused on the fact that Isaac's not there. As a parent, that's a reminder every day that you lost your child.
Hmm.
But being able to celebrate his successes and what he did as a person, prior to, you know, that happening is really what's important. Isaac, for him, it was 9/11. It was personal. And he enlisted because of 9/11. He was, from the Bronx. So we've got people out there, and again, it's watching the people. It is seeing history come to life. And for some locations, they use kids to help with like grave specifics, and they tell on the piece of paper, they tell about the person. They're getting to learn history. This person was in the Battle of the Bulge. This person was a Medal of Honor recipient.
That's awesome.
Um, it is just absolutely outstanding.
Yes, it is. I totally agree with you. When you look at different companies out there, what should companies really understand about the connection? You mentioned people, 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 and I totally agree with you. But what should companies understand about the connection between, you know, people, mission, and operational performance? I mean, you've done it now for years on the charity side. People do it for a living, to create profit or hopefully not to generate loss. But
Yeah.
what should companies understand about that?
Again, I'm always going to say people, what drives them, what motivates them. Um, and it stems from having a conversation. Take some time to get to know the people that are working for you. And I mean that on a personal level. Find out what's important to them. Um, that within itself is where you're going to make the difference and differentiate yourself. If they feel like they can come to you and say, sometimes they're going to come to you and say, hey, um, X, Y, or Z has happened and I need to go home. Understand that that's going to happen. But also, you may learn or understand or find something really cool. Like you may have a employee out there that works for you who was a member, played on the Savannah Bananas team, right? Like you've got something and find out what that is, what's important to them, because that motivates them. And you taking the time to truly get to know that person or for them to feel like you actually care about them. Getting that buy-in, getting that culture, setting that will help you retain, keep them tenfold because money is not always the motivating factor. Yes, it's important, and it's not that money isn't a motivating factor until they can make X amount of money a year. Their flexibility, their home time, their ability to, feel that they can make autonomous decisions and be supported, not feel like they are micromanaged. Those are all those small things really lead to making it better.
That's awesome. We got two more questions here. Okay.
You got it.
One I am going to surprise you with. It's the last one.
Okay.
What message? Here's the one that I'm not going to surprise you with. What message would you offer the next generation of people growing up in the transportation space, next generation of leaders who want to build a stronger and more unified supply chain? I mean, you have a lot of experience. You've been doing this since you graduated college, what, 5, 6 years ago?
Yes.
And
Right.
yes, and yeah. So what would you tell people that are
Find a mentor. That is one of the most important things that you can do is find a mentor. I've got a couple out there in the industry. Brad Bentley, president of Fastport, has always mentored me throughout my career. I had a VP who is now COO at Hirschbach. TJ Presley has always answered a phone call, even if I didn't work for him. Whether it was, hey, just want to see how you and the family are doing. Hey, I've got a question. Hey, I ran into a weird situation and want to get your perspective on it. Find a mentor that you can talk to, that you can trust. They don't have to work for your company. It is great to have one within your company because you've got somebody championing you as you are, moving through and trying most likely at a younger age to get promoted and crawl up the ladder. That is so important is finding that mentor that you can talk to, you can have open and honest conversations with and be like, "Hey, this is how I handled it. I feel like I could have done better." And two, don't take feedback personal. Not everybody likes feedback. I'm not one that loves it. I'll be the first person to say it, but if I can change it, so that I'm being better and more effective for my career or company, then let me do that. Um, with that being said, also be able to talk to your boss and be like, hey, this isn't working for me. Or have the relationship with your supervisor where if you mess up, you can go in and say, hey, I screwed this up. I have a plan on how I want to fix it, but I want to make sure that you agree since you know. As a leader, I've always had basically two rules. It was don't surprise me and don't embarrass me. So if you mess something up, it's fine. Let's work through it. But I need to know, and don't let me get blindsided in the middle of a meeting with me not knowing that there was a change or that something had happened. And creating that open communication is important because as you grow in the ranks throughout the industry, you're also going to get the opportunity to mentor people and give the help that you wish that you would have gotten.
Yeah.
Um, you always have to give back. It is That's so important to give back and let people feel like that's where they're at.
So, final question for you. I'm going to kidnap your best friend, and I'm going to put him or her in a room, no windows, one way out. And I got the key, and they are not allowed out until they tell me something about Courtney George. Courtney George would never want the world to know. What would
Oh,
that be? I mean, besides the fact that you have an incredible heart and that you're very passionate about the transportation space and diversifying the transportation space, we learned a lot about you. So, what is that little personal nugget that you don't want people to know?
I would say probably, I work in nonprofit, but I also volunteer on a national level for my sorority, and people don't get how much I care and how much work and effort that I put in to make sure at a collegiate experience, um, people really don't get how much I care about things, especially that I'm doing or volunteering. The level of passion, sometimes the level of frustration. But it is something that for me is, I try to be the steady Eddie out there that's not emotional. Um, but some days inside it definitely hits you different than others.
So, where'd you go to college?
Alabama, huge
We are,
football fan.
we are Volunteers fans, so I'm gonna say go Vols.
That's a
You
little
know.
rough, Jerry. I thought we were
I
doing
mean,
good till now.
two of the last four times we beat you guys, and that
I
we're,
know.
we're we're
Listen,
changing the trend. When everybody pays their players now, it's all evening out.
it is definitely evening out. I was in Alabama all 4 years that I was there. We were on probation. And I remember being like, "Are we gonna beat Southern Miss for homecoming or like Louisiana Monroe?" Like unsure. And we had 17 outstanding years of success. And it's definitely the NIL has changed it.
It has made things even.
It is my parents give me the hardest time, because I guess I yell at the TV. That's probably the other thing people don't know is I feel like they can hear me coaching them. Doesn't matter where I'm at in the country. I feel like I am part of the coaching staff that day.
Well, I'm not. We can disagree on that, but that's. I love your passion. So normally I end this with a whole blurb about how amazing you are and how great you are and your tradition. But this time of year, as we approach Thanksgiving and we're coming up on Christmas, but most importantly December 13th. Tell us again about what happens on December 13th. Tell us about where we can go to support December 13th and why we should be doing it.
Absolutely. December 13th is National Wreaths Across America Day. So, at communities all across this country, people are getting out to remember the fallen, honoring those who served, and teaching the next generation. Take the opportunity, go out with over 5,500 locations participating. We do this in all 50 states, plus Guam, Puerto Rico, Guantanamo Bay. We are
And these are
going to do.
cemeteries, correct? These are
Yes.
cemeteries.
These are
And
cemeteries. They're not all national cemeteries, and that's what I love about our program, is that this has grown into community engagement. A lot of people, especially after 9/11, didn't want to inter their children in a national cemetery that maybe is 4 or 5 hours away from them,
right.
and chose a local cemetery, and 1,000% I can get that. So know that you can play a part. It's easy to volunteer based off of whatever location, or wherever you are within the country. Also, please make a donation. Every donation and every wreath counts. That is something that I can't stress enough, a $17 donation. I had a driver, one of the road team captains, Scott Post, made a comment about it, and he said, it's less than your Starbucks every day. Um, you know, Somebody said if you make one wreath donation a month, that's
This thing
12
was
veterans.
this thing was $10. You can't even see it, but this little coffee here was $10 this morning at the hotel.
Jeez,
I
jeez
know.
Louise.
Jeez Louise.
So it's not a big ask. I'm not asking for something that's going to make or break your budget with that $17 donation, but you know, it is something that is going to make a difference for a family, for a community. And so get out there, come out and experience what it is to participate in Wreaths Across America. And most importantly, any questions, anything that you have, go to www.wreathsacrossamerica.org, and that will give you probably every answer to a question you're looking for. Um, we've got so many links and different aspects on the site, but
Is that
www.
is that where they can also find one of the 5,500 cemetery locations?
Yes, sir. If you
Okay.
click search and it'll say by location, by zip code, by name, it gives you the opportunity to look it up in a way that it's easy for you, and you can see, what time the cemetery is doing their service, or ceremony, what time everything's happening. Register. It's free to register, and the location coordinator, if heaven forbid that there's like weather or nor'easter, we had this a couple the year of COVID 2020. We had a nor'easter come through and had to delay wreath laying just from a safety perspective. And so we were able to communicate with all those that were coming and saying, hey, we need to delay this by 6 hours. Please come out at this time. So that's a great way to stay up to date on what's happening, or getting reminders right before National Wreath Day. And that's all by looking up, just click and search, and it'll help you find exactly what you're looking for.
Courtney, I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate the time and the passion that you have. I mean, I've spent some time around you, but I've learned a lot more about you, and you have a really cool background. You have a really cool outlook. I don't agree with the whole Alabama thing, but everything else sounds amazing. So December 13th, let's support Wreaths Across America. $17 per wreath. It's not going to break the bank, and let's get out to one of these 5,500 locations. These people gave the ultimate sacrifice, and let's take a couple hours out of our day and support what they can't support anymore. So thank you, Cord. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much. I appreciate being here.